In the name of God, Creator, Redeemer, Sustainer, please be seated. Just move this. You're mic'd on?
Yes.
Okay, good. And Susie's going to adjust the camera. Are we both fitting in? Looks good? Okay, we can't move around though because we'll disappear from online.
Try and stay in one place.
It's great to have you here today, Cameron. Tell us a little bit about your story and your people.
Okay, so my name's Cameron Burr. I am a proud Bowendig man. My people are from the southeast and coastline of South Australia, just across the Victorian border to the Gawler River, and then inland to Millicent and Mount Gambier. One thing I forgot to share with the people this morning actually is my last name, Burr, comes from the Mount Burr region near Mount Gambier. Sounds awesome, but actually is because of my great-great-grandmother was an orphan and she was found there. So they just put Burr on her birth certificate, and that's how I got my last name. So good to be connected to country, but a sad way to get it, I guess. I'm a chaplain for Carlin as well, so I have the blessing of dealing with Anglicans and Church of England people who haven't been to church for 40 years every day of the week, and also the, I guess, pseudo-Aboriginal chaplain as well. So, yeah.
And your role in NAIDOC?
Yes, my role in NAIDOC. So recently I was thrown under the bus and became the chair of NAIDOC, which is keeping me very busy.
NAIDOC is?
The National Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Anglican Council. So just to give you sort of an idea of what that is, the voice that they voted on back in the referendum, NAIDOC is essentially that for the Anglican Church. So every diocese has a representative. I'm the Adelaide one, and we also meet as a national gathering, a bit like General Synod, and give our 5 cents worth on things that are taking place in the church and how to better connect with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as well. So.
And if you're not here on a Sunday morning, where would you normally be?
Currently, the locum at Mary Magdalene's. So if I'm not there, actually some days I'm both on call as the chaplain. So
great. So how did you end up as an Anglican priest?
That, like I said this morning, that's a long, drawn-out story, but I'll give you the cliff notes. I actually blame Peter. He's the culprit. He's the reason I ended up in the Anglican church. But how I ended up as an Anglican priest was really just enjoying supporting the downtrodden and being a voice for those as well. I firmly believe that everybody and anybody, regardless of who or where or what, is loved, and yeah, I wanted to be able to provide that to people. So.
And have you found the Anglican Church a broad place to be both an Aboriginal and an Anglican priest? And what is it like to be both, or to be an Aboriginal Anglican priest? A mixed blessing, I imagine.
Yes. So a bit of a love-hate relationship. In some ways, it's a blessing. So as I shared this morning, my great-great-grandmother, as I said, was an orphan. Bishop Augustus Short actually sold a block of land here in the Adelaide Diocese at the time they were building the cathedral, and gave it to a woman by the name of Christina Smith. And she was the one who took my great-great-grandmother in. So it's a blessing to be a Aboriginal priest in the Diocese of Adelaide for that reason. But it's also, obviously the church that's based out of England, very colonial, a lot of struggles. a lot of struggles with that, and I think most Aboriginal lay and clergy would say the same thing. Actually, any people that have been colonised, truth be told.
And you said a lot of struggles. What would be what couple of the biggest struggles?
I think for me, and probably for most people, it's the structure. It's still this very top-down approach to things. You know, Father knows best, and not so much of a willingness. It's interesting because one of the reasons I joined the Anglican Church was the openness to investigate all things and to welcome all people. But we welcome, but we don't so much listen. So that's probably one of my biggest struggles. Mm-hmm. And I get in trouble sometimes for chucking tantrums because when people don't listen, I raise my voice. So.
And is there one thing you think Anglicans do well with respect to Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander issues?
Yes, and I would say this is the NAIDOC side of things. It was a great privilege for me when we were going through the referendum conversation, especially when I was speaking to Anglicans, so they understand the structures, to be able to explain to them, well, the national voice would look like NAIDOC. And we are, the Uniting Church has the Aboriginal and Islander Congress, but we are one of the ones that, have a strong base. We're the only denomination that I know of that has an Aboriginal bishop as well. Not always given, again, the power or the respect that he deserves, but we are one of the only ones that have that. So,
do you remember where you were when the voice vote no came through and how you felt?
Yes, I do. I was sitting at home, and I'd sat down to watch it, and they said it would be at least half an hour or so before the vote started coming in. So I thought, okay, I'll go and get dinner, and it was one of those nights I didn't feel like cooking, so I got takeaway. Came back, and it had already said down the bottom of the screen, Australia says no. And my mind was on the same-sex plebiscite, so I would, obviously the way things, the votes had to be tallied was different. We had to get at least 50% of the vote for the referendum. I remember sitting there that whole night, watching the screen. It was like a train wreck. I couldn't look away. And going to bed that night, and still makes me emotional. Probably the closest feeling to me was when I got the phone call that my grandfather had passed away. You sit there with that numb feeling of, what am I supposed to do with this information? So, yeah, and it made, because it was a Saturday night, it made going to church the next day really hard, because being a fool, I looked at the demographics of age and vote and thought, well, my parish is very well represented in that age and that demographic, and I was, a little bit paranoid the next day to think, okay, there's these people that I thought accepted me and welcomed me, but don't want all of me. So, yeah.
Should say that question was unscripted. You've done very well to answer that, so I hope that's okay.
No, that's fine. That's
you can always say pass. I'm emotional too now. So we're going to segue now and talk a little bit about the Psalm 82. And I'll say a couple of words, and then we've got questions for both of us to answer as an Aboriginal person and as a non-Aboriginal person in our own different contexts. So Psalm 82 is a really fascinating psalm. Some scholars say it is one of the most remarkable or extraordinary psalms in the whole Bible, and some scholars have said verses 6 and 7 are the most remarkable verses in the entire Bible. The reason is it's from a very ancient time in Israelite history before they became monotheists. So we're monotheists, we think there's only one God. I assume most of us probably think they're monotheists, but this is an ancient time when the Israelites were what we call henotheists. They believed there was lots of gods and that their God was the best of the bunch. And so we don't have a lot of texts from this time, this very early time in Israel's history, but this is one of them. And so in this psalm, God is actually addressing all the other gods. And that's why it says God is passing judgment in the midst of the gods. And what's fascinating is that God judges them on the basis of how they've cared for the poor and the orphaned, those afflicted and broken, and says that they've been unjust, and that's the reason that they've come under judgment. And then in verse 3 and 4, God gives them the command to give justice and to rescue and to deliver those who are afflicted. And then 5 and 6 sort of continues the judgment and says that they don't understand, they wander around in darkness. And then 6 and 7, which is really remarkable, because here we have God, the God of Israel, addressing these other gods and saying, though you are gods, children of the Most High, all of you, yet you will die like mortals, like one of the leaders you will fall. So saying that at the end of the day, you're sort of not gods. You are, but you're not, as it were. So how do you read this in 2025 in a very different context? Well, one of the interesting things in the ancient world, and maybe also in the modern world, rulers were seen as gods or saw themselves as divine-like. And I think that's a great way we can think about this psalm in 2025, is that when rulers set themselves up as if they are God or they have divine-like authority and their authority can't be questioned, and that what they do has the imprimatur of God. God is on their side, and we see that in many places around the world today. So that's sort of the angle we can take. But we're going to be mostly focusing on verses, I think, 3 and 4. We'll see how we go. So, in verse 3, where God judges these rulers, these false or fake rulers, and says, give justice to the poor and orphaned, vindicate the afflicted and broken. What, for you, Cameron, as an Aboriginal person, what does it mean to give justice to the poor and the orphaned?
Well, obviously, for me, I think in practical terms, giving justice to the poor and orphaned. Well, first of all, when we look at the orphaned, as I've already mentioned, I come from an orphaned person, so we need to, but there's also other ways of being orphaned. So we'll talk about country later, but the Aboriginal people have lost that connection. They've lost that. So it's not just being without family, it's also about feeling completely alone as well. So for me, giving justice to the poor and to the orphaned is a practical thing, of asking, how did we get ourselves here in the first place, recognising that we actually have poor and orphaned people and what that looks like, and then asking, how do we restore it? How do we restore every single person in our societies, regardless of Aboriginal or not, back to fullness, back to equality with all of us?
Yeah, so for me, as a non-Aboriginal person in Toorak Gardens, it's quite a different question, as you can imagine. And so one of the things is, I think there's the hidden poverty that you get in the middle and upper class in wealthy areas. There are people who are poor and struggling, but a lot of effort that will then be put into making it look like that's not the case. So there can be a lot of shame around poverty if you're in a well-to-do area. And then, of course, there's other forms of non-financial poverty, addiction and mental health issues as well, where people feel, like you said, isolated and alone. We do also have had homeless people, living in the quiet garden even earlier this year. So it's not as if there's no contact at all it's not as if there are no poor people here. But sort of day to day, I tend to think more in those other emotional, relational terms. And if I was ministering in somewhere else, I'm sure, even Mary Mags, I imagine you have a lot more face to face with people living in actual poverty, homeless people, etc.
Because we have the car park to the side and the alleyway, we get quite a few people, and we also have the soup kitchen on the Saturday night, which I hear you guys are coming to join us. So
soon,
again, that's a practical way for Christian people to give justice, especially to the poor, as in financially and homeless and whatnot. So
And this word vindicate is a very powerful word, and what does that mean to vindicate to you?
So for me, that is, I guess, would be standing up, advocating for. When I read the Bible, correct me if I'm wrong, but Jesus was always standing up for, was always trying to elevate the downtrodden, the broken, the afflicted. Didn't really care much for the high and mighty. And we only have to turn on our TVs today to see people who will vilify those who are different, those who are downtrodden, those who aren't the same as them. So I think as Christians, whether we're talking about Aboriginal people and the misconceptions that are spread about them or other people groups, it is actually to turn around and say, no, that's not right. To not put our money where our mouth is, but actually to put our behaviour where our mouth is. To stand up for the downtrodden and to speak up. And when someone's spreading lies or bullying or whatever, to be willing to stand up and say, no, that's not on. So.
Yeah. I think for me, the place where, as you know, Cameron, that we met at General Synod in 2022, for the first time, for me, where I've felt I've done the work at vindicating is in the LGBTIQA plus area. In my work in the media, like I've been on the project and published in the Sydney Morning Herald and the Australian, done interviews on that and published also in that. And again, I think that's been at first I was very nervous because I'm a straight person, and so learning how to speak with rather than on behalf of. But then also learning and hearing from members of that community, they say it's great that somebody else can take the heat sometimes, and it's just because they said it's exhausting to always be at the front line. Yep. And I remember Cameron and I wrote a motion for Synod, was it last year or the year before? I think it was the year before.
Year before, yeah. And
on Aboriginal reconciliation, and you said the same thing to me. So I actually wrote the motion and you seconded it, because you said it's really important for non-Aboriginals to take that lead and to drive reconciliation. So I also learnt that from you in that point. So I do think there's a lot of ways. So as a non-Aboriginal person, I can be involved with we speak together. That's what we're trying to model today. So don't think that don't ever think any of us can't be involved in vindicating for those who are in situations for which we have no lived experience. Yeah. Now I'm going to jump ahead because I loved what you said in the first service about country and your connection to country, so we'll skip right to that question. The psalm talks about land, the earth belongs to God, the foundations of the earth are shaken. Obviously country, land is a terribly significant and rich idea, concept, way of life for Aboriginal people. I still feel I barely understand it, so please enlighten all of us. What does it mean? What does it mean for you?
So country for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and most First Nations people throughout the world is everything. Country is everything. It's not just, we do laugh at, not laugh at, but laugh with these environmental groups who talk about conservation. We've only been banging on about that for the last couple of 100 years, and had those practices in place for the last, 9,000 plus years, if you look at my people. But country is far more deeper than that. Country is everything that we are. So from the moment we are born, there are actually special places within country where our women go to give birth. As we grow up, there are places where our men and women, or boys and young ladies, go to become women and men, and they're sharing stories and traditions, hunting, gathering, all of this stuff. Our song lines, all of our recognition of creation, is connected to country and to the landscape, to the waters, to the hills. So for us, country is everything. It's our cathedral, it's our hospital, it's our shop, it's our whole entire identity. I think this is why Aboriginal people have, actually I don't think I know why Aboriginal people have struggled so much, is they've lost their compass. They've lost their soul, who they are as people, because you can't get that same thing off of country. So, like that.
Gosh, it's very rich. As I said in the first service, I'll say it again here, as a non-Aboriginal person, I sort of feel, I don't so much feel disconnected from the land, I just don't feel anything. I grew up in Sydney, a very urban environment. I didn't meet an Aboriginal person until I was 19, when I moved to Geraldton for 6 months, and 50% of the population, about 10,000 people, Aboriginals there, in 1990. And, so I didn't even know much. And so, yeah, it's just not, you talk about it like from birth and as something that's intrinsic, and it's sort of not ever really been part of my thinking. So, like you said in the first service about, you go out into nature when you want to find your bearings and connect, and I certainly do that. And I think a lot of people find the way nature is refreshing. Whether it's just your own garden, or for us, Mambray Creek and the Flinders, we used to go camping each year.
Yep.
So yeah, but I just don't, what it is you're describing is not part of my being, so that's a gift and a mystery. So.
And then it's horses for courses. For some people, when you're looking for answers, you would come into a building like this, you would light a candle, you would sit and pray. That's what works. Other people would walk into a mosque, into a temple, into a whatever. For myself, even though I am a priest, as Matthew was just alluding to, I don't find God in a building. I never have. And actually, when I found out more about my Indigenous ancestry, it made so much more sense to me. Because when I'm looking for God, or when I'm struggling with something big, I go bush. You'll find me sitting on a rock in the middle of whoop whoop. I quite often say that I don't get reception inside buildings. I'm like a broken mobile phone. I need to be outside. So.
And your journey as an Aboriginal man's been one of like learning more about your past, your history. You wouldn't have had all that from your young age. You've learnt stuff as you've gone. And
no, so my ancestry is on my father's side and his father. Now, as is the case in a lot of First Nation families, he married a white lady, as did my father, but it was a dirty secret. Okay. Growing up, I would hear stories about, I say this and it's derogatory, but my great-grandfather being so dark that, if you turn the lights off in the corridor, you couldn't see him, and all these other stories about my great-grandfather and my great-grandmother getting together, and it was almost told to us like this Mary and Joseph story, which it actually wasn't. I won't go into the deeper story because it may be distressing, but there was little hints, but never wanted to speak about it. And one day when I actually lived in Melbourne, I went to the Koori Family Trust and picked up the paperwork, brought it back to my grandma's house, to get her to help me to fill it out, and she almost kicked me out of the house. She did not want to have the conversation.
She's on the English side?
Yep.
England.
Yep. So
she was embarrassed about your Aboriginality or her connection?
Yes, so because my grandfather was Aboriginal, was a lighter skinned Aboriginal, and went off, joined the war, came back, then met my grandma when she was on holidays in Sydney. But then they moved to Melbourne and, for all intents and purposes, lived as a white Anglo-Saxon family, which is what you had to do in those days to get by, you know, to get a government job, to be relatively successful. So they just, buried all evidence of our Aboriginality.
So when you say, maybe that helps me understand, when you say you're a proud Boondik man, some of that pride's also learning to overcome, you know, some of the shame or the secrets, and being able to own that and, you know, understand your story and where you've come from. And
and there are. I think this is something that Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people have in common. As you go through the stories of your ancestry, there are some pretty harrowing things.
For sure.
And Aboriginal people have had that happen to them. But what we also need to remember, if we're talking about reconciliation, which is the end game of conversations like this, is actually there are families out there whose relatives have been responsible for some pretty heinous things that have happened to Aboriginal people, but they're struggling with that just as much. So we need to be gentle with both sides, and stop sort of blaming or holding against people something that their great-great-grandparents did.
That whole being reconciled into their past, whether it's white colonial past, Indigenous past, it's such a vexing and challenging and ongoing question, isn't it?
It is, and I think, you know, where I can turn around and say that I'm a proud Boondik man, if we take that uncomfortable journey together, and it is uncomfortable, and we need to be honest, there needs to be truth-telling, not judgment, but truth-telling, then we can actually all stand together and proudly call ourselves Australians, you know, regardless of whether we're First Nation, Boondik, Ghana, whatever, or, you know, we came over a couple of years ago from a war-torn country. I mean, that's one of the beautiful things about Australia.
Yeah. Oh, we could keep going, but I think we better wrap it up. We had some other questions, but I think it's been great to hear you, Cameron. And are you happy to close in a prayer for us?
Sure. Loving God, Spirit of creation, Lord, we thank you for this land, for its peoples. Lord, and we thank you that this country, regardless of the histories, is a safe haven for all of those seeking refuge from harm and persecution. Lord, may we always keep that in our minds as we interact with each other, that we are all made in the image of the one true God. In Jesus' name.
Amen. Amen.